What are your thoughts on Buffalo barely beating the Miami Dolphins in this wild card matchup?
They got lucky. There's no other way to say it. And to me, the biggest thing that slowed down the Bills in this game was their turnovers. And this has been a consistent theme with the Bills this year. They have just had inopportune turnovers time and time again this year. And in some of these games, it's cost them. Now, fortunately for them, that didn't happen in this game. But I have to say, the Dolphins pushed them, I think, to their breaking point because there were times throughout this game where the Bills have a turnover, the Dolphins take advantage of it, they put points on the board. And then it actually got to a point where at halftime, it was 17-17. The Bills got off to a 17-0 start. The Bills came flying right out of the gate. And then these turnovers popped up once again for the Bills. And then the Dolphins took advantage of it, and they really made it a competitive game. And even in the second half, the Dolphins were up. So it really, once you factor in those turnovers, it was a significant portion of this game. Fortunately for the Bills, they were able to stabilize and they were able to lead some effective drives offensively in the second half that got some points on the board and did create somewhat of a cushion. But even with that said, the Dolphins, led by Skylar Thompson at the quarterback position, had some nice drives in the second half to be able to get some points on the board. And the fact that the Dolphins got this to within 3 points at the end of the game, you got to give them an A+ for effort because they were playing balls at a wall yesterday. Unfortunately for them, they just couldn't get the defensive stop that they needed late in the fourth quarter to try to get either a game-time field goal or a game-winning touchdown at the end of the fourth quarter. But the Bills were just able to execute on that last drive that they had in that fourth quarter to be able to go into victory formation and advance to the divisional round. Now, when it comes to the Bills moving forward into this divisional game that they'll play against the Bengals next week, they got to clear up their turnovers. There's just no other way to say it. Josh Allen's been turning the ball over way too often this year. I think this year in particular, he had 15 interceptions, which I think was tied for the most in the NFL. And once again, he had a couple turnovers in this game, had a couple interceptions, also got strip sacked, which I think was actually turned into a touchdown by the Miami defense in the same exact play. And if they have these turnovers occur once again in the Bengals next week, it could be a very tough game for the Bills as a whole. The Bills are still one of the more well-rounded teams in the NFL. You could make a case that they are the most well-rounded team in the NFL. But the biggest thing with them has been their turnovers this year. And to me, if they're going to miss a Super Bowl this year, it is going to be because of their turnovers. They're just going to get into a position where they dig themselves in too deep of a hole, and they just can't get themselves out of it. Fortunately for them, they dodged a bullet, like you said, Kev, yesterday, because I didn't think that the Bills were going to be in this much of a dogfight against the Dolphins yesterday. But they were able to kind of just roll through the punches yesterday and end up getting a victory. But albeit, it was a little close for comfort as far as I see it. So they're definitely going to have to make some adjustments. They're going to have to clean up their turnovers going into next week if they want to get farther in the playoffs. But honestly, that's just how I see it.
Well, first of all, I have to start this off with a massive kudos to Mike McDaniels. People like myself and other multiple media outlet personas, or personalities, excuse me, were saying that this was going to be a rout, just like I did. No faith with Skylar Thompson, no faith with this defense. Mike got them prepared. Ending the season the way that they did on a 6-game skate and then barely beating the Jets. The narratives were circulating throughout all of football media, right? Just the Dolphins aren't ready. They don't belong here. They're going to get washed. Potential of Mike McDaniels getting fired. All these things, right? And then they go and they take one of the best teams in the league with their third string quarterback and a multitude of missing pieces. And they bring them to the precipice of defeat. Like literally they're at the door. I just don't understand how it happened. This is why people say any given Sunday. I know that there were some playoff games on Saturday, so I'm just, for the reference, it could happen at any time. The Bills looked off. Josh Allen had 3 fumbles. Luckily, he only lost one of them. But let's be frank, the offensive line of both teams were horrible. Skylar Thompson was hit 11 times. Josh Allen was hit 13 times. Josh Allen was sacked officially 7 times. Skylar was sacked 4. So if the Bills are going to look to making any types of strides for improvement, it's got to come up front. first and foremost. Now, I know that the Bengals, who they're going to face next week, aren't exactly known for sacking the quarterback, but when you're pressured this much in a playoff game, I just said the same thing about Joe Burrow, and Kyle said the same thing about the offense. It slows the momentum down. It slows the offense down to a point where mistakes are made. You start to second guess. You start to hesitate, and that's why the turnovers were happening so often for the Bills. Josh Allen had 3 turnovers alone between the fumble and the 2 interceptions. We didn't expect much from Skylar Thompson. I mean, his numbers say it for itself. 18 of 45, which is just horrible. 2 interceptions, a QBR of 22.6, and a passer rating of 44.7. Like, that is just not going to get it done in the playoffs. We didn't expect it to be this close, but if Tua is there, maybe even Teddy Bridgewater, I think the Bills lose this game. I said the same thing about the Ravens game just a couple minutes ago. If the starting quarterbacks for each opposing team are playing, I think that both of these teams get upset. Truthfully and honestly, I mean, the Bills played that bad, as did the Bengals, and it's going to be who plays worse next week. Because, I mean, Josh Allen, like Kyle alluded to earlier, and as he has been all season, Josh Allen, for whatever reason, has been very, very turnover prone. And it's just not looking good for the Bills in critical moments. They've had a couple close games that didn't need to be as close as they were. And if their defense didn't save them in that final stand, I think it was in the fourth quarter, like I said, trying to score or go up. I truly and honestly believe that this game goes a whole different direction. I mean, Buffalo ran the ball for over 100 yards, but that Buffalo defense was able to lock down Miami's rushing attack, and they only had 42 total rushing yards in that game. So Buffalo did what they needed to do, similar to Cincinnati. Both games were very, very similar outside of the scores in terms of quarterback struggles, defenses having to step up in the most important moments. But, I mean, Kyle also had stated, man, Miami dropped a couple of passes. I mean, Tyreek Hill had 15 targets, and he only caught 7 of them. Some of them were overthrown, some of them were miscued, but I do know for a fact there were some critical drops throughout some of these drives that could have kept that momentum going. But it is what it is. I think they showed enough fight to prove that come next season, when they're fully healthy, when they have a full season under their belt with their starting quarterback, I think that this team can make some noise in next year's playoffs. But as of right now, the Bills are moving on. Miami goes home. I'm hoping, for my brother's sake, Mike McDaniels secured his job by bringing these boys together and competing against the Bills.